If the UK formed a citizens' army, there wouldn't even be enough helmets for everyone. We're going to read into this more from Byline Times, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an article from Byline Times with the headline of if the UK formed a citizens' army, there wouldn't even be enough helmets for everyone. Talks of a possible conscription in January ignited debates on how prepared the UK is for a possible conflict. Official figures now reveal just how little basic equipment they have. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share us across social media so others are notified of this video. So there was obviously that talk at the start of this year, guys, about a conscription of some sorts, and that was shot down quite rigorously. At the moment, I still stand by this by it, but we don't need a conscription of some sorts. However, it would be nice that if everybody had some, maybe it would be ideal if maybe had some, if people had like maybe I don't know, 6 months of training or something, maybe as a part of a standard thing, and then, you know, if there is a last resort sort of thing, if the country is under great intensity threat or whatever at war, maybe, but maybe even that's pushing it a little bit. But I don't know about this this kind of conscription, whether we need that kind of thing at all. I know the army is depleted. I know the army forces is low. Numbers are low. We talked about this before, guys, in the past, and I know one of the ways that could help mitigate this is obviously it needs to be better promoted. It needs to be better advertised. You need to put incentives in front of people in order to join the army as well. As times change, you need to tweak things here and there. Obviously, it's all well and good saying, offering incentives and whatnot, but it's also talking about, well, where's all the money going to come for this? Of course, there's always a talk about where money comes for all these things, so that's rightfully for say in terms of helping increase those numbers. But is it right that we should have some kind of conscription? Now, one of the options that I had when it comes to the low numbers was perhaps offering people in asylum seekers and whatnot the possibility of joining the army. And many people thought, and some people in the comments had this silly idea about apparently they're going to take over the country if immigrants join the British Armed Forces, which I think is the most stupidest thing I've ever heard. But I've heard stupider things, to be fair. But I think it would be something, it give them something as opposed to just them being wasted by taxpayer money sitting in hotels, barges, and whatnot as well. So. But we do need to have a serious conversation about the army. I do think it's really, really important. I do think we need to keep a reasonable armed forces. The army itself is very low, and we need to do something about that number, that's for sure. But how we do that and the way we do it is obviously a question. But as it says right there isn't enough, there wouldn't be enough helmets. And it's absolutely right. Which is why we need to look at increasing our own production, which hence why I covered the exclusive. I may have covered an exclusive from Sky about what David Cameron was saying about ramping up production. So I do think there's that situation as well. But yeah, it is an issue. But at the same time, we also have our own issues. We have a cost of living crisis. We have a housing crisis. We have a low economy. We have businesses that are not doing well. We have a failing NHS system. We have a problematic education system. We have crime out of control. We have a lot of issues seemingly not getting under control. So if you ask people what their number one priority, the chance of them saying anything about the army, I would say you probably would say 0 to none. Because most people will point to some of these other issues with regards to problems within the UK. So as Britain's readiness for conflicts has been laid bare with official figures showing that if conscription took place tomorrow, there wouldn't even be enough basic protective equipment for everyone. In January, Britain's former top NATO commander ignited debate suggesting that it was time to think the unthinkable and consider introducing compulsory enrolment for service to prepare the country for any potential battle. While there is no immediate threat of war, the UK government has been urged to bolster its defence capabilities in light of conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza, as the world is moving from a post-war to a pre-war world. The comments come for Sir General Richard Sheriff, making the possibility of being called up to fight feel closer than it has in generations. Conscription ended in the UK in 1960, having been the first to introduce it in January 1916, 18 months into the First World War. It required all single men aged 18 to 41 to join. So Richard told Sky News at the time, conscription to most professional soldiers, I have counted myself as one, is an absolute asthenia. Britain's armed forces have traditionally culturally relied on long service volunteer, highly professional soldiers with huge experience, and that is really the way we all want it to go on. General Sir Patrick Sanders, the outgoing head of the British Army, added in January that if NATO went to war with Russia, such a conflict would need to be a whole of a nation undertaking. Military and analysis professor Michael Clark added to Sky News Daily podcast that the UK will probably have to go back to having a citizens' army, but stressed that this is not the same as conscription. A spokesperson for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak later said that there's no suggestion of that happening, but on April the 30th, iNews reported that a blueprint of a volunteer army reserve involving ex-service personnel is being considered by the defensive chiefs. The proposal, the newspaper suggested recruiting an initial 20,000 former regular army and reservists in the Ministry of Defence MOD. It's been urged to take up the plan by army officials, as well as Lord Robertson, the General Secretary of NATO and Defence Secretary under Tony Blair. The ultimate aim of the proposal, iNews have reported, would be a 200,000 strong force, which would be made up of willing recruits from the public who would only be activated in the event of serious national security threat. If the UK managed to bolster its numbers, the army would struggle to provide soldiers with the body armour and helmets they need, figures released by the MOD to Byline Times under the Freedom of Information Act. The British Army currently has 8,364 sets of Osprey body armour and 130,933 sets of Virtuous, which is used as body protection for soldiers. It has, official figures revealed, 178,451 Virtuous helmets and 55,000 personnel role radios. The MOD has delayed replying to further Freedom of Information requests by Byline Times to reveal other potential equipment shortfalls. That's extremely worrying, that we are short on all these numbers here. That should be a cause for concern. Dr. Christopher Tuck, reader in Strategic Studies at King's College London, told Byline Times that the question of whether these numbers would be enough depend on the intensity of any potential conflict. What is clear is that the UK lacks the military capabilities to fight a large-scale, extended, conventional war of attrition, he said. Spelling out exactly how unprepared the UK is, he added, at the moment it lacks the numbers, equipment, reserve and production capabilities to sustain such a fight. An MOD spokesperson told Byline Times that the army has enough stock in it for its defence commitments. However, a Defence Select Committee report from February noted that there are capability shortfalls in stockpile storages. The report noted that the army is losing personnel faster than they can replace them. The MOD service personnel statistics from January 2024 revealed that 10,680 people had joined the regular armed forces, but 16,140 had left, reducing its numbers to 5,460. The army represents 110,000 of the UK's 183,000 total service personnel, both of which have dropped by 3.7% in the previous year. Reports in January revealed that the British Army had shrunk from 100,000 in 2010 to around 73,000. General Sanders, speaking at that time, said within the next 3 years the army needed to be 120,000 strong with additions of reserves, but even that, he said, wasn't enough. Mr. Tusk told Byline Times that the personnel and equipment issued was not a new problem, explaining, even during the war times there were doubts over the UK's ability to sustain such a conflict. There were great difficulties in creating even one's capable armoured division during the Gulf War in 1991. He said it was not a problem specific to the UK, even using virtually the whole of NATO's production capabilities has proven difficult to remedy UK's capabilities and production shortfalls. The former MI6 chief, Sir Alex Younger, said last month that the UK should consider a Swedish-style conscription system, which sees a relatively small number of adults called up for military training each year. So it could be, a random lottery is what they're saying here? A lottery system where basically people are called up to do a year's conscription? Is that what they're suggesting here? That doesn't seem fair though, because there may be some. It doesn't seem fair. But Andrew Mumford, professor of war study at Nottingham University, told Byline Times the problem is the discussion of conscription often gets conflated with examples drawn from other European countries, including the Scandinavian countries, where some form of national service is still manifest. The key difference is that there are important historical reasons why the mode of national service has been maintained, and why they continue to do so today, given today's threat environment. While Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine, launched on 24th February 2022, set off talks and possible conscription in the UK, Dr. Tusk said the chances of conflict between NATO and Russia are probably low, given the struggles that Russia has exhibited in its war against Ukraine alone. Despite the gradual escalation in NATO's commitment to support Ukraine, there seems no appetite from the part of Putin to respond to more rhetoric and the continuation of hybrid activities, he explained. While the UK government has dismissed conscription being an option, Sunak has pledged to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. A target of 2% for GDP defence spending is extent for NATO member states, but many countries do not meet this target. Yeah, that's the thing is that Britain is meeting its target, but there are lots of nations within the NATO member states who aren't meeting it. The MOD spokesperson added, "We have announced plans to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence by 2030. Yeah, well, we'll wait and see on that. Meaning an additional £75 billion spent over the next 10 years will further support equipping our armed forces. We will hold the adequate stocks to supply and support our defence commitments, including us as a leading NATO ally, and demonstrated by deploying 20,000 personnel to exercise steadfast defender." We'll have to wait and see, obviously, on that. I'm not taking anything especially from the government's position on any of this whatsoever, especially with how they've been looking after the country, let alone our armed forces for the last 14 goddamn years. But there does need to be something needs to be done. The change needs to be done about this. To say that there will never be conflict ever is folly. There will be something in the future. We should have, in my opinion, we should have the stockpiles there just in case. It's the same thing when we had the pandemic. We should have had the preparations in place before. And we have the preparations now, but we should have not needed them. It's better to be safe than sorry. It's better to have the equipment in reserves. Better to have these things prepared just for any and all outcome. The saying, better safe than sorry. Why not? Obviously, in terms of how we deal with the numbers in terms of the armed forces, I'm not sure. So obviously, Sweden's style there obviously is more like a postcode lottery sort of thing. I feel it's like you've been selected for 1 year's conscription. It's just like, but does that seem fair? Part of me feels like it's not fair, especially if a part of it does feel unfair, but at the same time it's like it's just a random lottery, isn't it? Some people, but there is the option of, if you want to join, you can join, but it would obviously help for a year as well. It would help. If it would help the numbers, especially with people to have those just there just in case if they need them as well. So maybe a random lottery is probably needed, because it's a random lottery if you get picked for jury service. Should it be right that it should be a random lottery? It would also depend on the age gap as well. It would probably be like between 18, I would say maybe 18 to 20, 28 or something like that. Maybe like in a 10-year gap, there'd be a random conscription point where you have to go to join up for 1 year. But unless you have general legitimate reasons, then you can't do a 1 year conscription. You have to be very detailed and it has to be very clear. Maybe that's something to consider. Maybe some people will vehemently disagree. But something needs to be done to help bolster up the armed forces. And I do think it's really important that we do. We still have a very important role in the world. And that really does matter. So we do need to look at many different things there. But what do you guys think? What do you guys make about a citizens' army? What do you make about our lack of equipment? What do you guys make of of Sweden's conscription law? Obviously, it's a different. It's obviously different nation, different culture, and whatnot. I understand that, but I'm trying to look at ways at how we can improve the numbers here. What do you guys think? What ways do you think we could do them? I don't agree with full-on conscription, but I do think we do need to look at ways that we can improve the army numbers and reverse them what is happening. So if you have any ideas, put them down in the comments below and let me know what you think. If you found this video informative or interesting, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video. And subscribe, because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p. Or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content there as well. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope to catch you all very, very soon.